working with Abby and Gundy, it's amazing as an artist to be given just total creative freedom, which you don't always have working with certain galleries or people. And it just has given me it's opened me up to all the possibilities. So your trust in me, and I know every time you're probably like, oh gosh, what is she gonna do this time? So thank you so much. It just means the world to me. And I love you ladies so much. So thanks so much for coming tonight. And so awesome to see friends I haven't seen for a little while, and new faces too. So thanks so much for coming out. So yeah, this is my show, Paradox. And generally, I create within the realm of interpreting the 4 life elements. So earth, air, fire, and water. And every show is a little bit different. So for the theme for this show, Paradox, such a funny word. And it's a concept that can be pretty uncomfortable sometimes, but is really part of just the human experience. So paradox comes from a Greek word paradoxos, which means to see beyond. And in our culture, we often interpret that as like contrary to beliefs or common conception. And so I was really just wrestling with the idea of paradox within my own personal life. And I found that as an artist, like Lori was just talking about, whatever we're experiencing, it comes through our artwork. So this body of work was really the kind of physical manifestation of this internal process that was happening within me. And looking at nature, paradox is throughout nature. If you think about the cycles that happen with our seasons and freeze and thaw, in the fall, this kind of death, and in the spring, this rebirth. And all these different kind of bigger truths and wisdom that's built into the natural cycles of nature. And I have found that that mirrors the human internal landscape. So this body of work is my attempt to kind of marry those two. And I do that really by, these are all variations on landscapes in different ways, some 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional, and somewhere in between. I'm not sure how to even label some of them. But I think to understand how paradox plays out in our world, you have to change perspective. So I'm showing some of that in a very like real, actual form of the perspective of these kind of dual images, mirror images of reflections of the sky on water, land on water, and also like some of these images are underwater, so some of the paintings are actually underwater images. And then also like aerial perspectives of some of the relief sculptures mostly are all aerial perspectives of looking down. So sometimes in order to really gain meaning from our experience, we need to shift our perspective. So again, these are all natural cycles of our world that I'm exploring through my art that then translate to the human experience, the cycles that happen within us. So, I was just talking about the cycles within nature, but if you think about the human experience, the paradox of 2 seemingly contradictory emotions being present within our life. I think we live in such a culture that would push us to say it's either or. And I would challenge that and say it's both and. That really kind of interpreting meaning and getting a fullness of life, you have to be able to look at both of them and hold both of them, which can be really uncomfortable sometimes. But, that's where the good stuff is, leaning into that. And I found that as I've touched on those tender parts of my life that are uncomfortable, that's where healing comes. And, you know, there's that old children's book that going on a bear hunt, like you can't go around it, can't go under it, you have to go through it. And so I think that as I've created this body of work, it's been very healing for me. And even though they're landscapes, it's been this internal landscape that I've been navigating. And this is that expression of that.
Well, I'm not sure if I have a question, but I'd like to hear what you have to say about what I want to say.
Yeah.
A few things in my mind. One is when you talked about paradox and changing perspective. I was thinking about, you know, when I'm going to say Picasso because everybody knows Picasso, but Cubism and how they were changing look perspective. Well, when I'm seeing a lot more than in the past because of drone images of the looking down, and that's so prevalent now. It's a more common perspective, and the paradox for me is the drones piss me off sometimes.
I get it.
But at the same time, I'm seeing the most beautiful scenery, the most beautiful views of things that I've never seen before. So for me, that's paradox. But the part about it, that kind of a view becoming more common.
Yeah.
Did you have any, you know, drone images?
Yeah.
When you were creating your?
Absolutely. I use a lot of drone images. So really, I used, especially for the relief sculptures that I was doing very specific places, I used Google Earth a lot, which is just, if you have not even been on Google Earth, it's just it blows my mind that we have access to these satellites. So that's really excellent for the geography of a specific place, but drone images for color reference has been instrumental in me really getting the essence of a specific place. But I'm also with you. I hate being on like the ski slopes. And I'm like there's this like giant bee above me that someone's taking this drone, you know. So yeah, I'm hoping that we can find this balance, right, of the new technology that allows us access to, like you said, this new perspective that totally opens up, you know, these views that we've never seen before. But yeah, they're kind of annoying too. Sometimes I get it.
The use of the acrylics is no accident. It must take some pretty good background and quite a studio setting. Well, how did you start getting involved with that?
With the more three-dimensional work, it's really evolved. So my last body of work was all about water, and going into that, I'm traditionally a oil painter, so working on these 2D surfaces, and I kind of, as a fun challenge to myself, I thought, how can I translate some of my two-dimensional work into the 3 dimensions? So I started to just play around with materials, and you know, it's like I'm a trained art teacher, so I was trained in all mediums, and so I'm not, you know, it felt in a way like coming home to sculpture because I just love I love it all. But I didn't want to invest a ton of money, so I just walked around Home Depot and was like, what can I like get here that I can just start playing around with? And these big insulation like foam sheets that I'm sure we all kind of have like in our house are pretty cheap and make actually a really excellent sculpture material. So I just started playing around with that, and it's really evolved and developed into kind of I feel like something that I've never seen other people do in the way that I'm doing it. And so it's been this fun exploratory process of learning how each type of foam reacts differently to solvents and spray paint and heat. And playing around with that has been just a fun adventure in and of itself. So yeah, so they're on these wood bases, these like panels, and then I'm building up layers of foam, and that I'm carving and etching with, like I said, heat, knives, spray paint, acetone, and then they're painted, and both with spray paint and acrylic, And then I do a layer of resin, epoxy resin over the top of it to kind of seal it all together and give it that unified sheen. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. But Tia, so it's absolutely. Oh, my goodness, it's so toxic. Right, you should be. I mean, this stuff it's like literally like melting in front of me, which is so fun. But yeah, my friend Tia is a potter, and has a studio right by mine, and she's like, I just saw you spray painting the other day. So I try to do most of it outside if I can, and then I wear a full respiratory mask, not just a little dust mask, like the full deal. You don't want to mess around with really any of it. It's pretty toxic. So yeah, and gloves, protective clothing. I'm like, I should just get a hazmat suit.
I know you well enough to know that you don't like to explain why or what your art is, because you're like, what do you think it is? But like that piece is so crazy and so awesome. And I'm so interested if you could give us like a little background to like what your thought process was. Did it start? Did you have a finished idea? Did it happen? Like, I would love to know more about it.
I would love to tell you about it. So this piece is called Heaven Meets Earth. And a lot of the artwork is of specific places that either I've been to myself or I want to go that are on like my travel bucket list. And I'm exploring all these like gorgeous places elsewhere. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we live in this amazing state, this amazing city that, you know, people come from all over the world to explore. Like how lucky are we that we live here? And I'm like, I need to do one about my hometown. So some of these, a lot of them are these mirror images with water. So I'm like, I don't have water here. I'm going to kind of invert the reflection and have it be a double image, but have it meet in the sky. So this is Garden of the Gods in Pikes Peak.
But like,
yeah.
What about like the universe and the sky, and what about that? Like, what made you think of reflecting?
Yeah, you know, I'm so inspired by the natural world, and everything is symbolic to me. But I was looking really at like this place is my access point for how I experience my life, this physical city, and it's kind of like this portal. You know, it's portal to the whole universe. So why not have it meet within the sky and the moon, which is like this, you know, open expanse. So thank you. Yeah, thanks. It felt it a lot of these, I mean, it's varied. And again, like what Lori was just talking about with what she was reading with from Rick Rubin's Creative Act, which I love that book. I'm so glad you were reading that. It's been so meaningful to me. But you know, like I think we really need to follow wherever our inspiration goes, or else I think it will just leave. I found if you don't respect that, it will just go away. But if we listen and we're attuned choice by attuned choice, you know, if we're following that, like it just leads us to really interesting places. So I think that curiosity is the like art superpower. And if we can just, you're shaking your head, yes, of course, I know it. It's just, that's what leads us to the good stuff. So yeah, and I'm thankful for Abby and Gundy to show me or give me a place to show my work. And that allows me to explore so many different ways of being an artist. Sometimes I start with a kind of an idea in my head about maybe something I want to like. I want to create something peaceful. Maybe it starts with that, but I think more often it starts with I'm intrigued by a certain image or a place, and then the meaning is kind of worked out as I'm working. It's almost like it tells me why I'm curious about it. Like it starts with something. Sometimes I feel like the ideas are all here, like floating in all around us. And if we're open to it, they just sometimes we can pull them out of the air. And it's not really our job, I think, as artists to like have to, you know, have this great meaning right away. Sometimes it's just a matter of following your curiosity, and then you figure out why you're doing something later. Maybe sometimes even years later, you look back at your artwork and you're like, oh, that's what I was doing then. So it happens different ways.
I don't quite know I don't know if this is going to lead to a question, but I just had some observations. I've had a wonderful time spending with your work, actually. I'm fortunate to be able to be here and really talk to people about your work. But something I was curious about is just your materials, your use of materials, especially your three-dimensional objects. Mm-hmm. And so you talk about paradox and like either or how about both? And I wondered if let's see, there might be a question. The materials, like the styrofoam mm-hmm. and the paints, and you're trying to depict connections to the planet. And so sometimes I see political pieces here. And, how, if we don't take care of our planet, where will it lead? Well, we have to, see places that used to exist from a artificial place, So yeah. I don't know if you had anything to say about that, but I was just curious when I spent time with this, your use of materials and the choices that you made for this work. So.
Yeah. Thank you for just having thoughts about my artwork. That's great. I'm not totally sure how to answer that, but 100%, I think that, the world, the natural world is one of my largest influences. And I think that we are nature's stewards and we are not doing, I think, our job that we need to do. And so for sure, I think preserving like the fragile beauty of our world is our job as human beings. Like we are a part of nature, we are not apart from it. And so that's a huge part of my work. And I don't know if you would get that necessarily right by just looking at it on the surface level, but thank you for spending the time with it, that maybe that led you to be thinking about that as well. As far as the materials go, I think that, I try to leave myself open enough that whatever would best serve the subject matter is what I use. So I use a lot of different things. And a side note to that, like just when I was, talking to Chris about some of the materials I use are super toxic. And I'm like, dang it, like, what am I doing? Like, am I, right, it's a paradox. See, I just can't get away from it. So, I wish I could tell you, like, I don't know, there's some inconsistencies in my work maybe and how I'm working. And I'm not sure how to reconcile that. So, yeah, I need to think about that one a little bit more.
I don't know if this is, again, maybe a question, but I'm just really noticing the reflective quality versus the matte quality. And to me, it's feeling like the matte ones are more like spiritual interior versus exterior, and also the paradox of what that is. Was that even at all in your mind? Or am I just...
It wasn't, but I love that you see that. And you've actually pointed that out to me because it's interesting. The ones that are more of the dual image of the reflection of the water, those are the more matte ones.
Yeah. Which is interesting.
Which is kind of interesting, right? And then like you said, the more three-dimensional ones are covered with resin, so they have a much more reflective quality. So I love that you saw that. And I didn't consciously make that choice. But again, like, that's the magic and mystery of artwork. You can really interpret that. If that lands with you and that's meaningful to you, then yes, of course.
Yeah, of course, yeah. No, I was just curious. Yeah. And also just a compliment. I love how you made the depth of the canvas pieces to kind of be wider to go with the bigger pieces. That was just really smart.
Oh, so. Thank you. Well, I mean, like your note about curation, how it's hung, that's an art form in and of itself, and that's what Abby and Gundy do so well. So that is props to them for sure.
It feels like a paradox too, which is super cool.
Yes. We just can't get away from it.
I'm super impressed by all the different media that you have taken on and how well you've done it. It's all masterful. Did you train to do all these different things? Did you have someone to teach you And also, why were you inspired to use the different media, from the 3D to the light sculpture things, the painting you're famous for already, and how did you find the energy to do it all?
Thank you for that generous question, Chris. Well, thank you for that assessment. I think that I am really curious, and I think that I've learned to just give myself permission to just do what I want to do. And I think that maybe common thought might say that like you should have your signature of like this is what you do and that you stick with this, and there's value in that for sure. But I just have never been, I think, one of those people that could like do one thing and find, you know, nourishment out of doing that one thing over and over again. I had to look other places, and I've just been really curious. I mentioned before I was an art teacher before, so I was trained in school to be able to teach all different media, and so I think that as my ideas have diversified, my techniques have had to accommodate to that, and there's only so much I think that fly 2 dimensions, like there's some limitations there. Like, you know, I think that bringing it into the 3 dimensions just allows for a different facet of the same story to be told. So I think that as I was delving into this idea to like essentially hold it up like a prism, and there's all these different facets of this one thing, and to look at it from all the different angles, I feel like the different media allowed me to do that and to actually get more in depth to that idea and like tease it out as much as I can, while still hopefully having some cohesivity to it all.
Hopefully this is a good follow-up maybe to Chris's question. I'm just curious, maybe I would say first, it doesn't seem real common for an artist to switch mediums, and certainly not dimensions, I guess you would say. What were some of your challenges in transitioning from a predominantly 2-dimensional artist to 3-dimensional artist, and change in medium as well?
That's a good question. I think that I hate to use the term ADHD or ADD because I don't think it's a disorder. I think it's actually like this wonderful gift that I have. So I think that because my inspiration has come from a lot of different angles, I can switch back and forth between things. And I found that going back and forth between mediums, usually I'm working on like 4 or 5 at a time, and of the same medium, like 4 or 5 paintings at a time. And I just like can dive right in and get super hyper focused on that one thing, and then maybe exhaust that a little bit, and then I'm able to be like, oh, I'm ready for something different. And then so switching, you know, to sculpture, switching to whatever is like a almost like a respite, like rest from exhausting that other aspect of the way I'm working. But yeah, I mean, I'm just learning as I go. I mean, there's no arrival, I think, in any sort of creative pursuit, right? Like we're just always trying to grow and get better and figure things out as we go along. So, I mean, it's always a challenge no matter what. My favorite masterpiece that's here tonight is actually my son sitting in the back row. It's a cop out. But, well, the diptych, his sister is, you know, she's at work, so she's not here tonight. But, you know, I would say in each kind of way of working, I think I have maybe a favorite but it's like the moment I start pointing out, like, oh no, this one I love, like, I like that I felt like I grew a lot in that. And I'm like, oh wait, no, but like that one is, I don't know, it's so hard to, every single one taught me something, for sure. I would say that my least favorite, not necessarily because I don't like the way it looks, but because it was such an arduous process, is the light panels. Again, I love the way they turned out, but these were like 18 months coming, and it sounds so crazy, but so these are resin casts of sculptures. So I made these sculptures out of different materials, made a silicone mold of the sculpture, and then did a pour into these casts, and then I found a company to make these LED changing lights, so these all change and can be adjusted, and then I found this other company, 45 Degree Gallery, to build these light boxes for me. So it's just like, I just felt like I was slogging through. There's definitely like an immediacy to the paint and the sculpture that's like, it's there in front of you. This was a long process. So it's like the antithesis to a question, I'm sorry, or to an answer to your question, I'm sorry. Thank you all so much.